The Bulgarian split squat. We've all seen it done. We've all seen thousands of different variations of this movement. But what ways do we want to load it, and what variations are there for certain results or stimulus that we want to achieve? That's what I'm going to try and answer today. And I'm going to go through how to set up for the Bulgarian split squat, different variations, and why we'd actually use them. The first one that I'll go through is just a standard Bulgarian split squat, which is just a rear foot elevated, front shin. This is where the variation comes into it straight away. Your front shin can either be quite vertical or you can have quite an inclined front shin, and that's going to bias sort of what you want to achieve. So if we have quite a forward front shin, that means that the majority of the work is going to be done by that front quad. All right, so it's going to be more of a quad dominant movement. However, if we change that and we have a vertical front shin, it's going to be much more of a glute dominant movement. It's going to be more hip moment arm. Okay, so they're the two ways that we can sort of categorize this movement, either knee moment arm or hip moment arm. So when we're going to go through into the Bulgarian split squat, I'm going to load it with one dumbbell, as that is my preference to generally, because you can generally hold stability a little bit better and you can load it and get some good contralateral loading there into that sort of the fascial sling if you really want to go down that path. All right, so I'll start off probably about half a meter forward of a bench, take a step back. Your foot can either go flat or you can go toe up. It's completely up to you. For me, I prefer foot flat because I can really drive into it. From there, coming down, picking that dumbbell up, all right? And you want to have a position where you're nice and even. You want most of your weight over your front foot, and you want your belly button, sternum, and nose pretty much lined up over that second toe of your stance leg, all right? From there, if you're going to go knee forward, you're going to drive that knee forward as far as you can. Watching out if you've got a barbell in front of you, that'll come into play in a second. Driving as far forward as you can, keeping that dumbbell down by your side, standing back up. The variation here is if we're going to go with a hip moment arm. So I'll change feet, come to that position there, change hands. Now I'll keep this hip or that shin nice and vertical, and I'm going to sit back and down. So you see the difference there. My weight shifts back, standing back up. Really want to focus as we stand up, keeping our feet balanced, weight through the middle of our foot, pushing all the way through, coming back to the top. Now, the barbell variation or the Hatfield variation we're going to go with, all right? So the reason we can do this is going to help us really load up nice and heavy and increase our stability in the split squat. So without a dumbbell for a change, that can roll off to the side. You're going to be set up in that position there. So it's going to be at approximately belly button height. Come to that. It's a nice strong position so you can actually hold on to it, keep balance. And it's there just to guide you so you're not falling back and forth or side to side. So we're back. The dumbbell will be in this hand, all right, my left hand. My right foot is forward. Right hand on the barbell. I'm going to come down. You can bias that knee forward in a nice strong position and drive back up. What I tend to do with this is just keep my hand or the outside of my hand on the barbell so that I'm not holding onto it and pulling myself up the whole time with the barbell. It's just there for stability, an increased point of contact so that you're a little bit more stable, all right? Down and back up, all right? We can actually add to this as well if you have the ability or the equipment resources, go a safety bar. Have a safety bar set up a little bit higher. Yes, it'll be awkward to get under, all right? The other option is you can set the barbell up so it's on the other side of the rack, so it's slightly out of the way. You can still come under the squat rack, get the safety bar out. Then you're there, hold it with one hand and hold on to the rack there for added stability as well. Now, some different variations of the Bulgarian split squat. We can then elevate our front foot. Now, what that's going to do is that's going to increase the range of motion in total. So you're going to be able to have the opportunity to get more front shin or your knee further forward over that toe, or you can sink deeper into that hip and get a larger range of motion at the hip. So what that looks, cool. So we'll go in my left hip so you can see the range of motion at my left hip. So relatively center of the plate, again, foot back up, whatever your preference is. And I'm gonna get a much greater range of motion now at that hip here. So I'm much deeper into that position, standing back up. So you can use this as well for range of motion, also stretch through this rear hip. So I keep that hip forward and sink down to that position, driving that knee down, keeping that glute squeeze, come back up. Other side. knee forward. Big range of motion, so I'm really deep into this front hip. That rear hip's extended. Stand back up. All right, so they're the main ways that we can really play with the Bulgarian split squat. The big points of performance here is I want you to think about with your hips, hips are nice and strong. We're not rotating our hips under and we're not poking our ass back. We're keeping them tucked so our rib cage is down. We're nice and stabilized and we're pulling ourselves into that position and then back up nice and strong, right? Keeping everything here rigid and stable so that we can breathe and expand and increase the pressure in our midline so that we're not just and then just compressing and expanding through here without any changes in pressure so that we don't get as tight or as stable as we want to. I like Bulgarians as either a grind movement. If you look at my grind, jump and pump, they're either a grind or a pump movement generally. There is a variation where we can do Bulgarian split squat jumps where you'll have that front foot come up and you'll drive through into sort of a hip flexion moment where we're mimicking that position where we're cocking the hammer before we strike and sprinting. That is a more advanced movement though. Why? It has increased coordination, and then we've got to take into consideration, do you want a long or a very short ground contact time? Because a very short contact time is going to be it's a lot more advanced plyometric movement to sort of carry out. You need to have a good training age there. You need to be able to absorb and then use that energy and explode back out of that position very quickly. So you need to have the ability to use your stretch shortening cycle quite effectively. So Bulgarian split squat, it's an excellent movement. It is done a lot and for a good reason. I do try and keep some unilateral work in a lot of my programs, especially for variation there as well. Obviously, if you're moving slowly towards weightlifting preparation or weightlifting comp or a powerlifting comp, this will probably be sprinkled in there sort of 2-3 times a week just to keep things healthy and keep things moving, because it can be a really good way to actually modify how you're working. One last point before I finish, guys. When we're going through this lunge, try and avoid driving everything out like so and driving that back knee out into that position and driving that front knee right out like so. Try and keep everything nice and aligned in a good position, straight, back knee straight down, knee forward, come back up. All right, we're nice and stable and we're driving those positions and we're not trying to bias external, internal rotation. We're just trying to move through the range that is natural for our body. There's no need to bias one or the other generally. If you are trying to find a movement solution to bias external, internal rotation, I dare say there'd be a better effect. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.